Hi guys, I am back here in the library, ready to continue Lulu and the Brontosaurus. So when we had finished up Lulu, we just finished chapter 8, and Lulu was deep in the forest and going to sleep. Let's see if she got a good night's sleep. We were on chapter 8. Look at what chapter is now. Chapter 8.5. Who ever heard of chapter 8.5? At dawn, Lulu woke to the sound of birds calling to one another and the dusty, musky smell of the forest floor and the feel of a gentle late summer breeze blowing across her face and the taste, because she hadn't bothered to brush her teeth before bedtime, of yesterday's pickle sandwich. She also woke to the sight of something so huge, so enormous, so utterly gigantic that she thought, no, she was sure that she was still dreaming. It looked like a mountain, except this mountain had legs, a very long neck, and a very small head. It was, as I'm sure you've already figured out, the Brontosaurus that Lulu had been searching for. Chapter 9. Lulu closed and then opened, and then closed, and then opened her eyes again, and decided she wasn't dreaming at all. She quickly climbed out of her sleeping bag and announced to the Brontosaurus, "It's my birthday today, and just in time, I found you." "No, I've found you," the Brontosaurus told Lulu, "and I'd like to wish you a very happy birthday." "Oh, it will be very happy," Lulu cried to the Brontosaurus, "because you," she patted his ankle, because his ankle was as high as she could reach, "you are the pet I'm getting for my birthday." The Brontosaurus bent down his neck so his face was close to Lulu's. He looked at her back to front and head to toe, sniffing at her carefully with his Brontosaurus nose and making a rumbling noise. Nobody knows how dinosaurs sound, but in this story, they rumble. And slowly nodding his pin-headed head. There he is. "A pet," he said to Lulu after he'd nodded for a while, "is a very good thing." "A very, very good thing," Lulu replied. She opened up her suitcase and went digging around inside and pulled out a white leather collar, which she fastened around the Brontosaurus's neck. "Now I'll just attach this leash." She dug some more and found a long, long leash in her suitcase, "and take you home with me." Lulu attached the leash to the collar, feeling so pleased with herself that she sang a whole new Brontosaurus song. "I got it, I got it, I got what I wanted to get. A Brontosaurus for a pet. I got it, I got it, I got what I wanted to get. A Brontosaurus for a pet." She would have kept feeling pleased to herself, except now the Brontosaurus was shaking his head. And now, in his rumbling voice, he was saying, "No." He kept saying no and shaking his head until the collar and the leash flew off. "No," he said, "I don't wish to be your pet." Lulu, remember, hated hearing no. She really, really hated hearing no. So she screeched till all the birds fled from the trees, and then she threw herself down on the forest floor, and then she kicked her heels and waved her arms. The Brontosaurus waited patiently, without saying one more word, until she had stopped the screeching and the kicking and waving. "Finished now?" he quite politely asked. "Maybe I am," Lulu said, "and maybe I'm not. It all depends." And here she shook a finger right in the Brontosaurus's face. This girl was a pain, but she wasn't a scaredy cat. "It all depends on whether you stop saying no and start saying yes to being my pet." The Brontosaurus shook his head no some more. Lulu thought about screeching and so forth some more. But instead, in a very snippy voice, she said, "Now listen here. You were the one who said to me just a minute ago that, and I quote, 'a pet is a very good thing.'" "That's what I said," the Brontosaurus admitted. "So what is your problem, Mr. B?" "No problem," he answered. "Just a misunderstanding. Because when I said that a pet is a very good thing, I didn't mean I wanted to be your pet. I meant that you'd be a good pet for me." Chapter 10. Lulu's eyes were two round O's of amazement. She tried to speak, but at first no words came out. Then she was finally able to say, in a squeaky, amazed kind of voice, "I don't think I heard what I think I just heard, Mr. B." "You did indeed," the Brontosaurus replied. "Well, if I did," Lulu's voice was back to being its old bossy self again. "Well, if I did, I've got some news for you. A person has a pet. An animal is a pet. A person can't be an animal's pet. Ever." I love her big round eyes. There we go. "And I have some news for you," the Brontosaurus said to Lulu, except that he spoke more politely than Lulu had done. "You're about to be the first person ever to be an animal's pet. Congratulations, and once again, happy birthday." He reached out a hand, or whatever you want to call it, and gently scooped Lulu off the forest floor. Then he plunked her gently where his back met his neck. "Hold on tight, little pet," he said to Lulu. "I'll pull off some leaves from the top of the trees for your breakfast, and then I'm taking you home to live with me." "No!" yelled Lulu. "No, no, no. A billion zillion times no." "Yes, yes, yes," the Brontosaurus replied. "I'll feed you and pat you and play with you and treat you very nicely. And all I'll expect from you is to sit and roll over and fetch a ball and do cute tricks." What did he think she was? Some kind of dog girl? I really don't know. I can't read a dinosaur's mind. Lulu thought about screeching and throwing herself on the forest floor, except the forest floor was a long way down. She thought about squeezing the dinosaur dead, except she needed both hands to hang onto his neck. She thought about swinging and swinging her suitcase and bonking him on the head, except she left her suitcase under the tree. And she couldn't stomp on his foot because his feet were too far from his back, where he'd plunked her. Then Lulu started to think that the only thing farther from where the Brontosaurus had plunked her was her home. Her home where her mom and her dad were waiting. Her home where no one, not even when she was being a pain, which was most of the time, had ever expected her to sit and roll over and fetch and do cute tricks. I want to go to my house, Lulu told the Brontosaurus, and then added in a lot less bossier voice, please let me go back to my house, Mr. B. This was maybe the first time in Lulu's entire life that she, without being told, had used the P word. And yet, the Brontosaurus shook his head no. Once you get used to it, he kindly told Lulu, I truly believe you'll like being a pet. Lulu imagined being a pet in the house of this Brontosaurus and never seeing her mom or her dad again. She imagined eating leaves and doing cute tricks. Here, she's doing that there. And she said to herself that if she could only turn today into yesterday, she wouldn't go looking for dinosaurs in the forest, and she wouldn't say, "Boo on you," to her mom and dad. She was feeling especially sorry that she had ever said, "Foo on you," to her mom and dad. Chapter 11. The Brontosaurus pulled leaves off the trees and was offering them to Lulu. She grabbed them and threw them angrily away. A simple "no thank you" will do, the Brontosaurus said to Lulu. And I really liked that please you used before. So please, let me go home, please, Lulu said. Your yelling is hurting my ears, said the dinosaur. But I have to admit that even if you ask me softly and sweetly, I still would want to keep you here with me. I've been lonely, and a pet is a very good thing. For hours and hours and hours, from early morning till just past noon, Lulu kept telling the Brontosaurus he had to let her go home. And the Brontosaurus kept telling Lulu, no. He also kept assuring her that he'd do his absolute best to make her happy. He spoke in such a kind and nice and polite and patient voice that after a while, Lulu was talking, not yelling. And after a while, she was talking softly and sweetly. And pretty soon after that, she started to cry. Yes, Lulu started to cry. And it wasn't very often Lulu cried. She'd rather screech till the light bulbs burst and all of the other stuff. But right now, she didn't feel screechy. She felt teary. And so she cried and cried and cried, soaking the Brontosaurus with tears. He patiently waited as Lulu continued soaking him and the forest floor with her tears. He patiently waited some more and then said, I'm sorry I'm making you cry, little pet, but I won't be changing my mind. Would you like a tissue? Lulu now understood that no matter how hard she cried and how nice this dinosaur was, he was determined to keep her as a pet. And she now understood that if she was determined not to be his pet, she would have to escape. She cried just a little bit longer, but while she was crying on the outside, she was, on the inside, making a getaway plan. Sniffling a watery sniff, Lulu said to the Brontosaurus, Thank you, Mr. B. I do need some tissues. If you'll just let me down on the forest floor for a minute, I'm sure I can find a box of them in my suitcase. The Brontosaurus lowered his head and his neck to the floor of the forest. Floor of the forest, not the florist. Lulu slid off, stood up, smiled a small smile. She walked to her suitcase, opened it, poked around for a while, and found, are you surprised? A big box of tissues. But instead of taking the tissues out, she put her sleeping bag in, snapped her suitcase shut, and started running. The Brontosaurus stood stiff and still as if he'd been glued to the ground. And then he started running after Lulu. But Lulu had darted off the path into the heart of the forest and into a part of the forest where the trees grow so close together that a creature as huge as the dinosaur could not fit. She zigged and she zagged, and she zigged and she zagged through those close together trees while the Brontosaurus looked for spaces to squeeze through. He was trying his hardest to catch her, as hard as a mountain-sized creature can try, but she was leaving him farther and farther behind. "Come back, little pet, come back," Lulu could hear him calling, first loudly, then softer and softer. "Come back, little pet, I know you'll be happy with me. Come back, little pet." His voice grew ever softer, and soon she could not hear his voice anymore. Since Lulu could not hear his voice anymore, she stopped running and started walking. She tromped through the forest in silence, headed for home. But she wasn't swinging her suitcase, and she wasn't singing her song. And although she very much wanted to see her mom and dad again, and very much wanted not to be a pet, she felt kind of bad about the Brontosaurus. And so do I, because even though I'm the person writing this story, I don't like leaving him all alone, sadly calling, "Come back, little pet, come back." Chapter 12. But then, after maybe an hour, Lulu suddenly heard a different voice, a not so friendly voice, saying, "Hold it right there!" And standing up on his two hind legs and blocking her path through the forest, stood the black bear she had stomped on yesterday. "You hold it right there," said Lulu, "and please don't keep shaking your clawy paws at me. If I have to stomp on you, I'll stomp you, but I'd rather not stomp you. I'd rather..." She opened her suitcase and took out a jar of golden honey. "Give you this, if you would please get out of my way." What is going on with Lulu? She'd rather not stomp him? The bear took the jar of honey, opened the top, dipped in his paw, and slurpily licked it, mumbling something that sort of sounded like "thank you." Dipping and licking and slurping, he hurried out of Lulu's path, and she continued tromping through the forest. Until another familiar, another not too friendly voice said, "This time I'm eating you before you bonk me." And there was the tiger, the silky, slinky tiger of yesterday, ready to pounce on her. "Forget the eating and bonking," said Lulu, "and try on this beautiful scarf." She pulled a long, floaty, bright green scarf from the suitcase. "It matches your eyes, and I'll give it to you if you'll please get out of my way." And the tiger, happily wrapping the eye-matching scarf around her black and orange striped neck, growled something that sounded like, "Thank you," and slunk away. And Lulu continued tromping through the forest. Until, well, what do you think she met next? A wolf, a giraffe, a lion? Don't be ridiculous. She met, of course she met, what else? The snake, who was hissing an even nastier hiss than he'd hissed just the day before and warning her, this time I'll be the tighter squeezer. Lulu, looking disgusted, told him, nobody's squeezing anybody. All I'm doing is getting home today. And then she reached into her suitcase and pulled out a small flowered rug and explained to the snake, this is for you, if you'll please get out of my way. A soft rug to rest on whenever you feel like resting. The snake took the rug in his mouth and tried, at least I think he tried, to say thank you to Lulu, though it's hard to tell when a mouth is full of rug. In any case, he went slithering off, wherever a snake goes slithering, and Lulu continued tromping through the forest. Chapter 13. It wasn't too much later that Lulu could see she was nearly out of the forest. She was happy that soon she'd be with her mom and dad, but along with feeling happy, she was also feeling sad when she thought of the Brontosaurus she'd left behind. As a matter of fact, she pictured the poor lonely dinosaur so clearly in her mind that it almost seemed like he was standing there, just outside of the forest, waiting for her. And he was. Was Lulu shocked? You bet. What? She asked. What are you doing here, Mr. B? I found a shortcut, the Brontosaurus replied. Lulu smiled a soft, sweet smile, and then shook her head and sighed. And then she said, even though I'm only the person writing this story, I truly don't know why she's saying it in rhyme. Please try to understand, Mr. B, that I cannot be your pet, even though you're the nicest Brontosaurus I ever met. And if you take me away with you, I'll keep on running back home every chance I get. Not a bad rhyme, though that last line's a little lumpy. I already figured that out while I was waiting for you, the Brontosaurus told Lulu. I do understand that you can't be my pet, but please understand that I can't be your pet either. Well, Lulu understood, and the Brontosaurus understood. It seemed there was only one thing left to do. So they stood there, quietly looking at each other for a moment, and then they did it. The Brontosaurus bent his long neck till his face was close to Lulu's. He kissed her gently on the cheek and said, Happy birthday, little pet. Goodbye. Lulu put her arms around the Brontosaurus's neck. She kissed him gently on the nose and said, Don't be too lonely, Mr. B, and goodbye. Then she slowly walked down the road that would take her home. Then he slowly walked down the road that would take him home. And although Lulu and the Brontosaurus remembered each other forever, they never saw each other again. Wait a minute, it says the maybe end. Chapter 13, again. Wait! I'm not really all that sure about that ending. Maybe it's a little too mushy, a little too sad. But since I'm the person writing this story, I'm writing another ending, and you can decide which you'd rather have. Well, Lulu understood, and the Brontosaurus understood that neither of them could be each other's pet. But why should that mean they had to say goodbye? Come with me, and I'll give you a piece of my birthday cake, said Lulu. "I'd like that," the dinosaur said. "May I give you a ride?" And Lulu arrived at her house, riding happily on the back of a Brontosaurus. When her mom and her dad heard the noise of a dinosaur clomping into their yard, they remembered Lulu, and they remembered her birthday. Lucky for all, her cake had already been made. "Don't worry, he isn't my pet," Lulu said. "He's only here to stay for a piece of cake and a glass of lemonade. But he's kind of a lonely guy, and I would like to invite him back for Thanksgiving dinner." From that time on, the Brontosaurus came to Lulu's house for her birthday, Thanksgiving, and the 4th of July. And sometimes she visited his house, though. Since she didn't like eating leaves, she always brought a suitcase of pickle sandwiches. On one very special birthday, she not only invited her friend the Brontosaurus, but also the snake and the tiger and the bear. And the Brontosaurus noticed that whenever Lulu asked anyone for anything, she always said please. The end. Maybe. Oh my goodness. Chapter 13, yet again. I'm still not totally satisfied. I'm going to try once more because I think we need to answer certain questions, like, were Lulu's mom and her dad worried sick when she didn't come home that night? Had they bought her a present for her birthday? Did she completely stop being a pain and turn into polite? And how did all that stuff fit in her suitcase? I'm going to answer these questions, and when I'm done, you will have your choice of 3 endings. Well, Lulu understood, and the Brontosaurus understood, that even though they couldn't be pets, they could be friends. So Lulu invited the Brontosaurus back to her house for some birthday cake and introduced him to her mom and her dad. They hadn't been waiting and worrying and wondering where she was because they'd fallen asleep after sipping their tea. And they didn't open their eyes till the Brontosaurus, with Lulu riding on his back, came clomp, clomp, clomping into their front yard. They gave her a silver necklace for her birthday, and she sang them a whole new Brontosaurus song. I didn't get a Brontosaurus for a pet. I didn't get a Brontosaurus for a pet. It sure looks like you brought one home, Lulu's mom said to Lulu. And we still say no, you can't have one, said her dad. And both of them waited for Lulu to screech and throw herself down on the floor and kick her heels and wave her arms in the air. Except she didn't. What happened to the screeching? Asked her quite astonished mom. And her dad asked, what about throwing yourself on the floor? Lulu replied, very dignified, I'm 1 year older today, and I'm not doing that kid stuff anymore. And she says a very nice please, said the Brontosaurus. After the cake and the lemonade, the dinosaur said goodbye, but he would return for many holiday visits. Sometimes the snake and the bear and the tiger came too. Although she kept getting older, Lulu never turned into perfect. She still, though less and less often, sometimes screeched and forgot about please, though she never again in her life said foo on you. But she mainly wasn't a pain, and the Brontosaurus was mainly not lonely anymore. As for how all that stuff fit into Lulu's suitcase, I'm sorry to say, I don't have a clue. I am, after all, just the person who's writing the story. The end. Wow, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. That was kind of fun reading that in just 2 visits. Um, that is here in our library in the fiction section at FICVIO, if you'd like to check it out and read it on your own sometime. Lulu and the Brontosaurus. Bye.